Hi everybody and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about what's the difference between being a foodie or a gourmet, so to speak, or a foodaholic or a food addict. Okay, so what's the difference then between being a foodie, somebody who loves food, or a foodaholic? All right, so that's the topic of today's video, and you might be wondering, is there like a test I can take? Is there like a, step by step? And this video will pretty much sum it up for you, and you'll be able, I hope at the end, to understand which you are. And you can be some of both, okay? So welcome, and if you are new to the channel, please subscribe. And there are a whole lot of other videos in the playlist already for you, and one of them on that playlist that I highly recommend is all about food addiction, which goes in detail into the science of food addiction and the sort of the in-depth analysis of being a foodaholic. So I highly recommend watching that after you watch this one, but I'm going to go into it here in some detail. Okay, so what's a foodie? Let's start there. All right, a foodie is, we might call somebody who's a gourmet a foodie, somebody who loves food. Somebody who's a foodie isn't necessarily going to be overweight, okay? There are food connoisseurs, food critics, food chefs, people in the food world who are not overweight. They are foodies, but they can enjoy small amounts of food. They aren't addicted to food. They don't have a problem controlling themselves around certain foods. So they have a completely different relationship with it than someone who has issues, and we'll go into that shortly. But for now, we're going to discuss, just a pure foodie who just loves food. And if that's you, you're going to be kind of interested in the food in general. So you're going to be someone who's going to want to know what the ingredients are, and where do those ingredients come from. And you're going to kind of savor the tastes in these foods. You're going to savor tastes and think, what's that spice? I'm not quite sure what I'm tasting. You might ask the chef what that is. A friend of mine I went to a restaurant not long ago, and we split some macaroni and cheese. And so we wanted to add some nutmeg, because I don't know if you've ever tried it with nutmeg, but it's actually quite good. So we asked for a little nutmeg, and the waiter had no idea what that was. It was quite clear. So he goes off and he comes back with this like huge bowl. You're gonna need like a teeny bag bowl. But at least, hey, we had our nutmeg, right? Anyway, okay. So back to the foodie who is gonna be aware of the spices, might like cooking, reading gourmet magazines, watching the Food Channel, cooking shows, anything like that. So that's a foodie. And like I say, they can be thin. They don't have to necessarily be overweight. They can usually control their intake of food. Okay, so that's the foodie. So now the foodaholic, and by the way, I'm the author of the book Foodaholic, The 7 Stages to Permanent Weight Loss. I'm also a licensed psychotherapist and a weight loss expert. So the food addict or the foodaholic. Okay, so the food addict then is somebody who has trouble controlling themselves around certain foods, and those foods are generally the high fat, high salt, high sugar foods. So usually the processed foods are the foods that trigger addiction. And it's not just in a couple of people. I mean, this is why we have such an obesity problem in America and globally, because these foods they activate the reward pathways in the brain that are the same reward pathways as those of the drugs of abuse. So it's, the, and I hope this doesn't trigger anyone, okay, but let's, for example, the image of a beautiful piece of chocolate cake, let's just say, um, will, if you like that, okay, or any kind of food, let's just say your favorite food, um, if you picture it, well, I'm not saying do it now, but just, so for science, right, that if you picture it, um, just the images of it will begin the chemicals in your brain that are the happy chemicals that begin kind of making you feel like, oh, yeah, kind of good, right? And the reason that people have trouble with food, the reason the obesity rate in our country is so high is because these foods do make you feel good in the short term. They absolutely do. They work, which is why we use them to medicate. And that is also the difference where a foodie does not use food to medicate their feelings, whereas a foodaholic will. A foodaholic will, let's just say, and I am one that controls it. I'm maintaining a 60-pound weight loss now for a really long time. So we foodaholics then will have a stressful event happen, and we will want to go to food. We will want to have some high fat, high salt, high sugar food to calm ourselves, to soothe ourselves, because even just the idea of it will begin to make us feel better. Oh, what would really help right now? Even though, that's not logical, right? We know it won't, because whatever the situation that is stressing us out has nothing to do with ice cream that would make it so much better. And we also know that if we have the ice cream right now, yes, in the short term, and it depends on how long we go into ice cream land, by the way, but in the short term, it will make us feel a little bit better. It will distract us. It will calm us down, and it will take the edge off, kind of like a drink or, a joint or, some other kind of drug of abuse, gambling or shopping or, sex, anything that people get addicted to will do, and it will just take kind of the edge off whatever's stressing you out. Okay, there are other really healthy things that will do that, and I highly recommend you get the book Foodaholic. I'll put a link in the description box below. It talks about different strategies to use to soothe yourself and calm yourself and not use food, because you don't have to keep doing it, that's for sure. But anyway, so a foodaholic then is someone who will use food to self-medicate, who cannot control themselves around certain foods, who can become obsessed with food and have a really difficult time emotionally separating from food or certain food rituals. Right? That's the food addict. Okay, so you might wonder if you're one or the other, and from both of those, those are pretty broad examples where I'm talking about them in big terms. Here's the super duper foodie who doesn't have a problem, and here's the super duper food addict who has a big problem, right? And people are sometimes in the middle. Sometimes you can have both in one person, where you're like a total. I do have one person in mind who she's a total foodie, and she can't control herself around certain foods as well. So it's kind of both. But usually most people are going to be one or the other. They might think they're foodies, but when you talk to them about a gourmet tomato, they're not as interested, right? As opposed to like lemon meringue pie or something that will activate the pathways. Okay, so that's about it for today. I hope that answered some questions for you about the difference between food addiction and just loving food. And there is a big one. Well, actually several, as you have now heard. Okay, so that's it. I hope you're doing well, and come back, and I will see you soon.